You're listening to Side Hustle Pro, the podcast that teaches you to build and grow your side hustle from passion project to profitable business. And I'm your host, Nicaila Matthews-Okome. So let's get started. Hey friends, hey, welcome back to the show. Today in the guest chair, we have Helena Faustin, also known as That Nurse Can Cook. Helena is a registered nurse and content creator from New York City who shares her love and passion for cooking with her audience on a daily basis. As a mother of three, Helena inspires millennials to get comfortable in the kitchen and cook delicious meals for their families. The success of her massively popular food blog, That Nurse Can Cook, has delighted millions of viewers around the world, led to write-ups in publications, and established various partnerships and collaborations. Helena also competed in Food Network's Out Chef'd, where she battled against a celebrity chef and restaurateur and was crowned the winner in a home cook versus top chef showdown. Each of Helena's recipes showcases the vibrant and robust flavors of Caribbean cuisine, and it is clear that Helena boasts a talent of healing souls one meal at a time. You can find Helena's delicious recipes in her first ever physical cookbook, The Soul of Scotchie, out now. I loved our conversation and I hope you do too. So let's get right into it. So Helena, welcome to the guest chair. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad we're able to do this and have this conversation. You inspire me a lot. And you might not know, you never know who's watching. Yeah,
You're right.
As a Jamaican mom, and also my mom was a NICU nurse for her entire career,
Wow.
Decades. Yeah.
That is amazing.
So I have a special place in my heart for NICU nurses. And I just love that you are balancing these two, your passion and, your professional job. So before I go any further, let's take it back a little bit. So when did you even begin to think about what you would be when you grew up?
I'm sure that you can relate to this, but Jamaican parents, they go for safety, girl. They're just like, when you grow up, you're not getting into any foolishness. Make sure you choose a career path that will keep you paid and working.
Yes.
So it had to be the medical field. It had to be law, engineering, accounting, something that comes with a 401k, a plan. And if you're really good, opportunities for overtime, because
right.
You know how Jamaicans are. You gotta have at least
not just working
2-3 jobs. It's never just one job. Where's your first job and where's your second job?
Exactly. Just the other day, my mom was like, "Oh yeah, I used to work at that hospital." I was like, "When?"
When?
Like,
Exactly.
Okay, overtime.
Yes.
I see.
Right. So I've always known that I was going to pick a career that was safe. I was never a risk taker, even from a child. I was the look before you leap type of kid. And I was just always fascinated by the human body. Like whenever I was in my science classes, when we got to plants, I would tune out. We start talking about the human body and all of a sudden I'm like acing the exams. Like I was so intrigued about how the human body performs its duty on a daily basis without us even having to think about it. So I always knew I was getting into the medical field. And when it came time to choose a college, I was just like, I'm going for the nursing.
Okay.
My mom was just like, do nursing. You always have a job. It's a well-paying profession.
So you didn't hesitate
the possibilities.
at all. You were laser
I didn't hesitate.
Focused.
Yes. I've always been a child that listened. I had my moments. Don't get me wrong. I had my moments. But when it came to advice on life, I took my mom's advice because she was always like, I want you to do better than me. I came here and it's a struggle when you don't have a career. Yes, you can find a job and you can still be successful, but it's a lot harder for you. And I don't want you to struggle. I don't want you to depend on anyone to survive. So make sure you do the right thing. And I listened.
Yeah, because they didn't bring us here to struggle, right? Like they didn't do all
Yes,
that sacrifice for that. So you start your
right.
career, you go to school. Was it easy to get into your career once you graduated, or did you have a little bit of a hard time?
It was hard. It was hard.
Okay.
You know, at the time that I graduated from nursing school,
Mhm.
St. Vincent's Hospital had just closed.
Oh.
And what happened was there was this
And this is
massive
in Brooklyn?
influx.
Because,
I graduated from Long Island University, the
okay.
Brooklyn campus,
Okay.
yes. And St. Vincent's Hospital in Manhattan, they were located, I think, around 14th Street
Hmm.
in Manhattan. They closed, and it was a massive hospital that employed like thousands of nurses. So what happened was they inundated the job market,
Mm.
and I was competing as a new grad with experienced nurses. And every hospital that I applied to was just like, listen, we're allocating our new positions to the nurses that were just displaced from the closing of St.
Wow.
Vincent's. And we're only taking nurses that have experience. And if you came from St. Vincent, you're at the top priority for a job. So I had to figure it out. I was pounding the pavement old school style.
What? I don't
I
usually hear that with
dressed up.
nurses. What?
Yeah,
Okay.
I dressed up. I put my suit on. One of my close classmates, we decided we're going to make a list of like
Hmm.
5 or 6 hospitals, print out our resumes, put our suits on, and walk into the hospital and physically deliver resumes. Because at that time, the internet was. It was around. I don't want to sound like a dinosaur,
Yeah,
but
I
the
know, right? I'm
internet
like,
was
what year was
around.
this?
This was like in 2010.
Okay, okay.
And the internet was around,
It
but
was
it
the
wasn't what
early
it was
days.
today.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
the in,
social media at least. Now
yes,
I know
it was
what you
still in
mean.
its
Yeah.
infancy
Infancy.
stages. So they would say go online, but we'd
Mhm.
be like, are they
Yeah.
really checking
At
the
that point,
applications
at that,
online?
yeah, like people weren't putting jobs online in the same way that they
People,
like they would do it, but they were still like, referrals, people moving within the job. So I know what you mean. It's
exactly,
like you used to think you
exactly.
were applying to a black box because it's like people would forget to check. They just put it there for show.
Yeah, they just put it there for show, and there was no way that you could really guarantee that your resume or
Yeah.
your application would fall into the hands of the right person. So we
Hmm.
figured the best way to ensure that someone actually got our resume
Yes.
was to physically go in there and hand it in. And we went to nearly all of the hospitals in the 5 boroughs, with the exception of the Bronx. I think I said I didn't want to travel to the Bronx. I didn't want to
I
travel.
am
At
offended.
that
No, I'm
time,
kidding. I'm
I'm
kidding.
so sorry. It
No, no,
has
no.
nothing to
Bronx to
do with the
Brooklyn. It's
Bronx.
like I always say I wouldn't even date. Well, now
Yes.
my husband's from Brooklyn, but it's like two different. It's like a long distance relationship. Okay, so I get it.
Yes.
Hmm.
The only thing is that I didn't have a vehicle at the time. So I needed to also narrow hospitals
Yes.
down to a point where I could get to work on time.
Right.
Because that makes a difference. Like you want to show up to work and you want to have an
Exactly.
easy
And
commute.
you're going to be
So
working long hours, night shifts, all these kind of things.
exactly. So just in case I had to work odd hours, I didn't want to have a long commute.
Hmm.
So I ended up getting offered a position at Kingsbrook in
Okay.
Brooklyn. They're right on Rutland Road in Utica, in that
Mm.
area. And I was working on the long-term care side of the hospital, wasn't even on a unit.
Oh.
And I worked in long-term care for about
Oh, I didn't know that.
6 to 8 months
Hmm.
at first. And my mindset at the time was take something. It might not be what you want,
Hmm.
but this might be an excellent way to get your foot in the door.
Right.
Stay there, do this position, make sure you make good connections, do an excellent job, and maybe what you really want may come along and you'll be an internal hire.
Yeah.
So that was my thought. That was my thought process.
Is that what ended up happening too? Like you
That did
transitioned?
not.
Oh,
It
okay.
didn't happen that way. But
Yeah.
what happened was one of my former clinical professors happened to be head of HR at Bellevue Hospital,
Mm.
and we had always stayed in touch. And she reached out to me and via email, and she was like, "Hey, the NICU's hiring. They want like 10 nurses. Hand me a resume." Lovely Black woman. Shout out to Professor Hayes because
Shout
she changed
out.
my life.
I love that.
And
The
I went in
interconnect.
there.
Yes.
Yes, I went in there. Beautiful Black woman. She was always like pushing for Black nurses to take up space in, these traditional areas that weren't always diverse. Because these highly specialized units, there's not a lot of racial diversity on those units. It's been very hard to get into in the past. So she really pushed for us, and I went in for my interview and I got hired.
Nice.
And that was all she wrote.
That's all she wrote. So at this point, you're thinking like, okay, I have my career. You've done what you're supposed to do. You get a specialized nursing unit. So at what point did you start side hustling? Did that come a few years later?
It came a lot of years later.
Really?
Because I started my position at Bellevue Hospital in May of 2011. And I was young, no kids, no husband, no house, no nothing. So life was great.
Yeah.
But then I got with my husband and the kids started coming.
They just started coming.
The kids just started coming. And life got real.
Okay. Were you cooking as an outlet even at that point, or it was just like lifing and nursing?
It was like lifing and nursing and just trying to get by. And what happened was I ended up having Aria and I went out on maternity leave. And while I was on maternity leave, I was just like, you know what? I think it's time for me to do a pivot in my career. And I ended up leaving Bellevue and I went to New York Presbyterian on their cardiac NICU.
Okay.
And it was then that I really started saying, I kind of like cooking. And I've always loved cooking, but it was then when I got on that unit, I was like I found myself gravitating more towards finding a creative outlet. And one of my friends said to me that, you're always showing videos of your cooking. And I used to do this on my private personal page that I just have with family and friends. So she was like, why don't you start a different page where you show nothing but your cooking?
Yes.
And that was 2018.
Shout out to that friend. Really? It was 2018?
Yeah, it was 2018.
Wow, that seems so recent. Now, I want to go back to you moving to the cardiac NICU, because first of all, I didn't realize there was a separate cardiac NICU. That sounds heavy. That sounds heavy.
Yes.
Is that why you needed an outlet?
Yes. Okay.
Wow. So tell us about that.
Listen, I've seen some wild things. Okay. I've seen some things that
and then how do you turn that off at the end of the day?
And I wasn't having a good work-life balance. There was no separation between me and the job. I was bringing work home. I was spending my days off thinking about what happened at work the day before. Sometimes I really loved it. Don't get me wrong. Like, what helped was management. I loved management at the time. We had a great support team. I worked with some awesome nurses. New York Presbyterian was just a great place to work. They seemed like they cared about their employees. They put the effort forward. So I was happy. Yeah, I was happy there. So it didn't really have anything to do with the institution itself, but the specialty can be very emotionally and mentally draining.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I think instinctively, I started gravitating towards cooking as that outlet to help me take my mind off of everything that was going on at work. And the highs were really highs, the lows were really lows. And as a mother, the work hits different. Like, you care about your patients, especially when you're working in the NICU, you care about your patients, of course. But when you become a mother, those patients you start to personalize them. You're like, this could be my baby.
It
Like, you
hits
think about your
different.
own children.
It
Yeah, you
hits
think about your
different.
own children,
Yeah.
the way
I
you
can't even
relate to
imagine how you
families,
do it. Like, I see babies at the airport and I'm like, if I'm traveling alone and I'm sitting next to a baby, like, I'm like, oh my God. Like, I
right?
just relate
Don't
to
you?
children overall differently. Like, I immediately
Right,
see my children in them. I'm cooing at them.
right,
I'm talking to them. Like,
right,
you just, they feel, it feels different. So now
right.
here you are seeing them on their worst day, and then you need this outlet. So when you begin
Yeah.
this different page for the cooking, how does it start out? Like, do you start dabbling in just purely content, or at that part, do you immediately start thinking about cookbook and monetization?
You know, my first thought wasn't monetization. That was not my first thought.
Yeah.
But I was very intentional about what I was doing. I was journaling what worked, what didn't work. I was
Ooh,
journaling what type of strategies I was implementing. I wrote down my thoughts, my feelings about my growth and how my life was changing and how, this content creation thing
yeah.
was taking over my life. So I was very intentional from the beginning.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's just like in me. Like, if I'm going to do something, I do it with intention, and I become incredibly disciplined, and I become laser focused. So I was always laser focused about what I wanted to do. And once I started to see how things were picking up and I started growing an audience, then I was just like, wait a minute, I've got something here.
Yes, you
I
you
might have
do.
something here.
And when you first started posting, did the audience come just out of pure discovery in the feed, or were you doing additional things to get in front of people and build audience?
My audience purely came from discovery, from everybody who liked, shared,
Yes.
commented. The Instagram page, Proud Jamaicans, they were always a major supporter
I
of
love that
mine.
page too.
Yes,
Yeah.
I love them. And they would share my work sometimes. And just from them sharing my work, I was
More
able to
people.
build an authentic relationship with my followers because they were like, okay, this food looks good. Let me check out, let me see what this person has going on. And so that's how it slowly started to build. And here we are today.
Yeah. And when you were writing down, I love that you were really tracking what you're doing. Because so many of us, we start out and then when it gets big, we're like, well, what did I do? What was I
What
doing?
did I
Right.
do?
What did I
Exactly.
do? What happened between this month and this month? So when you actually track, and you can start tracking at any time, you can actually
Hmm.
see and measure what had impact on growth. So for you, as you started doing that, what kind of trends were you seeing with what had impact in addition to people and other accounts sharing?
I started to see people really responding to storytelling and
Mm.
being relatable. And I
Ah.
think that to some degree, most of us want to see ourselves. We have like this ego, this small ego part in all
We
of
all
us.
have
We
an
want to
ego.
see,
Can we even say it's
yeah,
small, right?
small, right?
We can't help it. It's human nature.
Right. We
Yeah.
have this need to want to see ourselves
Yeah.
in something. So when I was journaling, I was like, yeah, my audience is really responding to the relatability factor. I think
Mm.
it's important to
Yeah.
maintain your integrity by being relatable. I think most people want to come to a space where they feel welcomed, where they feel seen, where they feel like, hey, I'm not alone.
Yep. Yep. I totally get it. And you know what I love about you and your content is it does feel relatable in the sense that it doesn't feel like you are some super untouchable person who was just born with these cooking skills. Like you show us how, you met your husband and you started to learn and study and get
Hmm.
recipes from his mom and practice and get better. And even with your own family, you'll say, I went and I took notes with my grandma and I wrote it down.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yes.
It shows you the attainability. Like this is not just like, oh, this is someone who's perfect at cooking and was just born this way.
Yes.
She has learned and studied her craft.
Right. And I just want to touch on a very important part because I think your listeners could benefit from this. I do want to say that it's very difficult to maintain your relatability when you would exist in a space where everyone is feeling forced to have it all together or even
Ooh,
look like they have it all
ooh,
together.
preach.
Social
Yes,
media is very predicated on aspirational content. You got to
yes,
have a perfect house. You have to have
yes,
the perfect spouse. You have to have
yes.
perfect children. Everything's got to be perfect.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
no
yeah.
one ever has a bad
Yeah.
day. Are you
Neat
kidding
and
me?
packed
Like
away. You hardly go to your
exactly.
kitchen that's messy.
Exactly. Like, listen, this house
Mhm.
be looking a mess some days, all right?
Yes.
I push the mess to the side and I set my camera up and
Right.
I go with what I have.
Exactly. Because I don't want
And
y'all to be distracted, but that doesn't mean it's
exactly.
not there. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm going through everyday struggles just like
Mhm.
everyone else, just like every other mom, just
Yes.
like every other wife trying
Yes.
to balance everything.
Yes.
And some people are like, oh my God, like, how do you balance it all? And you know what? I really come to the conclusion that I don't really think that there's ever a such thing as true balance.
No, no. And I'm so glad you're speaking to this because you're actually speaking to my heart. And we kicked off in
Yeah.
the pre-show, you guys just talking about the fact that before today I had to cancel Helena because my son had an ear infection. We were in the ER on Mother's Day. Today my daughter's home from daycare sick
Right.
and hubby's holding her down and it's just like what you mentioned about social media makes us feel like we have to be perfect. Sometimes I don't even realize that's what's happening, but it totally is. Like the psychological factors that are at play that are working on us, we don't even realize it because we're not supposed to. It's designed in a way where you're not supposed to realize how it's impacting your brain. But you're right. And so that also stops me sometimes from making content because I'm like, I don't look perfect enough today. The house isn't perfect enough. I don't have a perfect script in my head yet for how I want to promote this thing. And it's like,
Right.
what?
Yes,
Girl,
it's true. And you know what? That
what are you
perfection will stall
doing?
you.
Yes.
That strive, sometimes you got to take up your bags and go. Like
Go.
whatever you got, pick up your
Run.
bags and go. That is it. I'm telling
Yes.
you, like that. And I did see something somewhere on social media, and
Mhm.
it was like your perfectionism is killing you.
It is. It is.
It's killing us.
And it's a constant cycle because, as you mentioned, for those of us who grew up in certain traditions, it was a part of our upbringing. So you can't just
Yes.
unlearn that in one day, one week, or maybe even ever completely. I don't think I
Ever.
ever
Yeah.
can completely because it's who I've been for so long, but I can realize when it's happening and address it, and fight
Yes.
against it. So
It's
thank you
so true.
for raising that because that is part of what makes you so likable and
Thank
um
you.
I just love the
I'm
fact that
fighting
you're
against
showing up.
it.
Yeah, I know you have to because
It's
again, it's
till this day.
to this day
I'm
we're going to
really
have to fight against
intentional.
it. Yeah.
Yes, I am so intentional about not creating content
Hmm.
that furthers harmful narratives.
Yes. Yes.
And there are certain I don't, I support everyone's ability to do whatever it is that
Hmm.
they want. But
Yeah.
I do believe that certain content, if you're not careful,
Hmm.
it will play into a harmful narrative that
Yes.
like you have to have it all together
Yeah.
or you have to make sure that everything you do is you started from here and then
Hmm.
you got to show exactly how. No, it's
Hmm.
too much and it's placing too much pressure on us. It's
Yep.
unrealistic. Like sometimes we just want to grab our things and go.
Yeah.
That
And
might be the theme
it's
for this
right.
episode.
That
Just
might be
grab
the
your
name of
things
the
and go.
episode. But it's so hard
Grab your
with
things and
content
go.
creation because just the act of turning on a camera, it's planned, right? You're planning this
Mm-hmm.
out, and you would be lying if you said that if you plan when you're going to press play, if something inside of you doesn't make you want to just do something that you wouldn't normally do in your real life, whether that's straightening up, whether that's,
Right.
putting on some
Right.
lip gloss, whatever it is. If
Right.
something shifts from your regular life to your camera life, it doesn't mean you have to be fake, but we have to acknowledge that, right? At
You
the
have
same
to.
time, we have to be aware of what am I putting out there? And at the same time, I try not to overthink this all. It can be a little bit too much pressure too when you're trying to think about how do I not be fake, but how do I not create a harmful narrative and all of this stuff, right? At the end of the day, all we can do is just show up and be us, make the content, because you got to keep it moving. You got a family to take care of.
I feel like in order for you to not lose like your sense of self and not lose your touch with reality, you have to continue to create content that's rooted in your reality. Like, if your shirt is dirty and I'm about to turn the camera on, I'm gonna be like, don't you think you want to change your shirt? Like, at least show up like you care about something. Like, so I'll do that at least, but it has to be rooted in reality. And I'll tell you this, sometimes a lot of the things I post really just are random moments that I just whipped out my camera. So that's why sometimes my kid's hair might not be exactly perfect because I just whipped out my camera and like at the spur of the moment. I wasn't thinking of creating a moment. But sometimes even when you see people, when I try not to consume too much content, but even of the people that I do follow, like when I see something, I'm very detail oriented. So when I see something like, oh, look, there's a paper on the floor, like, you know what I mean? Or someone's hair is not exactly perfect. Like, to me, it puts in a relatability factor.
It adds to the like, oh, okay, their life ain't perfect either. Even though we know this, one time, it's nice to see.
I have to tell you this before I lose my train of thought. But someone said I had filmed a video that was completely off the cuff. Like, it was not scripted. Like, we don't do scripted content, but it was just one of those moments where I was like, oh, let me pull out the camera. And someone commented on my page and they were like, you got your paper towels on the floor and a broom in the corner just like me. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And I
like,
didn't
that's what you resonated with?
Yes. But like, it spoke to a bigger theme. Like, people are so used to seeing overly curated content that when
perfectly
they see something
polished,
as simple, as like, we all got the water on the floor. Like, we all have. Sometimes
I remember one time, my son, when he was younger, you could hear him cry in the back of an episode, and someone reached out to me like, "Oh my God, that made me feel so good to know that you have a baby crying in the back of your recording too." And I was like, "Yes, we got to keep it pushing, right? Child care or no child care,
keep it pushing."
So, I love that we're having this conversation. I don't want to lose sight of, I want to know a little bit more about how you went from the beginning, journaling, tracking, to strategically making this a profitable side hustle, right? And we're making money now. We're launching books. We got partnerships. So when did those aspects come into your business?
It started, I think I maybe had like 50,000 followers at the time. And I was like, I heard they be paying money. It was literally just like that. They be paying money.
I should get some money now.
It's time for me to like really figure out a way to get monetized. And the first brand that ever even gave me a chance at, collaborating was Grace.
Grace love Foods.
That. Shout out to Grace. They've been such a staple in our community and in our homes for generations.
Everybody knows Grace. We're all Caribbeans.
Yes. So they were the first ones that actually reached out to me to do a collaboration. And I was just like, and at the time I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how much to charge. I didn't know anything. So I was just like, I think it's worth this. Like, so we all have to start somewhere. You know what I mean? And taking things like that really helped me learn how to integrate products into my content. And from there, I started doing a lot of research. How are content creators and influencers managing to make a profit?
Yes.
YouTube was one. all right, let me start a YouTube channel. Let me make sure I set my YouTube channel up for success so that I can be monetized. So I started YouTube like very early because I knew you could get ad revenue from there.
Yeah.
So I started that out. Then I started working with brands. And then I also had a website. And I was like, yes, I can definitely get ad revenue. Let me figure out how to get ads on my website so that I could get paid for my traffic, and journaling and writing down what worked, what didn't work. And
Yeah.
even some of my biggest dreams, like what are your hopes and dreams for your future? And you'd be surprised how just writing it down, you start to instinctively work towards those things
Yes.
that you write down.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I've had a lot of viral videos, so a
Hmm.
lot of brands have reached out to me. I've been very, very fortunate to have a lot of inbound requests. And as my platform grew, all of the streams of income started to grow as well.
Yeah.
And then the work started to grow.
Ah, of
And then I was just
course.
like, then my work life balance was awful
Yeah.
because I was
Because are
working
you
full
right?
time
I'm
at
like
the
you're side
hospital.
hustling. Uh-huh.
And then the side hustle now is starting to become a monstrosity, and it's taking on a life of its own, and it's like seeping into other areas of my life. Like
Hmm.
I used to get up early and arrive at the parking lot for my job 45 minutes before my shift
Hmm.
and edit content in the car.
Ooh, wow.
A lot of people don't really understand or appreciate just how hard you have to work at your side hustle if you are really
Yes.
having an intention to grow it into a thriving business and eventually scale back the hours at your 9 to 5. But
Mhm.
I really sacrificed a lot to get here.
And which revenue stream started growing the most? Was it the YouTube AdSense revenue, the brand partnerships, the website ad revenue?
Brand partnerships is the most lucrative stream of income that I have right now.
Hmm.
And I want to say that because these brands are paying you a lot of money to promote their products
Hmm.
or to increase the awareness for their brand.
Okay.
And it's become the fastest way for me to get to a point where I can say, okay, I can scale back my
Hmm.
hours. And it got me to a point where I said, all right, now that I've set this up and these inquiries are coming, you get X amount of inquiries per week or whatever. Now you can say, I have a thriving stream of income here. I have another thriving stream of income here, and put it all together. And now you're like, you're running a full-fledged business.
And have you hired a team or contractors to start taking things like editing off your plate, for example?
I am still working on that. I'll tell people like editing is my most
Yeah.
despised. Like I will film content all day. Tell me to edit videos, and I'm just like, I'll just have it sitting in the queue. Like, girl,
Hmm.
you get up. Like, you film the content. Like, just edit it. Like,
Yes.
go and edit
Yes.
it. Like, I do. And then you get to a point where you're so particular,
Hmm.
you kind of become a little controlling that you don't even want to
Uh-huh.
hand it over to anybody else. But I do have a management team that works
Okay.
on my brand partnerships,
Okay.
and that way, like, I have a barrier in between like myself and the brand. I can outsource some of the
Yes.
thinking because it
Yeah.
takes up a lot of mental space.
Okay.
And especially when it comes to negotiating contracts, reading
Hmm.
contracts, making sure
Yeah.
that the partnership is mutually beneficial. I have someone who's watching my back so that I can focus some of my energy towards creating and coming up with merchandise ideas or working
Okay.
on my hopes and dreams and
Yes.
stuff like that. So I do want to say like hiring out is very important, and I hire out photography.
Okay.
Like, I don't take photos myself. Like, I hire a
So how does that
photographer
work?
who's
Do they come
capable.
every time you need to cook? Like, how does it?
But I film my own cooking videos. But when it comes to photo shoots, then I outsource that to a photographer.
Okay.
Like, you can take your own photos as a creator. Many creators take their own photos, but I am just a little bit more realistic about what I have on my plate and what I'm
Yes.
capable of.
Yes.
And for me, it's worth it for me to just hire a photographer and pay their fee, have them do all the editing, retouching. They have their own equipment, their own studio. I show up with the concept, the wardrobe, the theme, and all that
Got
stuff.
it.
And they
Yes.
take care of the rest and
Yeah.
deliver my photos when they're ready.
That makes sense, especially for the brand. There's so many aspects of content creation, right? Like you think,
Yeah.
yes, iPhone, I could do my reels, but will the quality of your lighting really do justice for this brand
Yes.
campaign? Like you really have to think about, yes, that's why McDonald's has people come shoot those cheeseburgers and the Big Mac. It
Right.
never looks like that in person, but
Yes.
you get the
Yes,
photo
because
shoot.
they hire food, they have an
Yeah,
editor, they have a
you need
producer,
food
they have a wardrobe
photographers.
stylist, they got a food stylist, they have a whole team
Mm-hmm.
that helps them. Mr. McDonald is not in there. Like making the burgers and making sure the
Yeah,
sesame seeds on top of the buns are strategically aligned. Like they
you have to
hire people
style
who
the
are smarter
food.
than them in that aspect. Yes. So
Yes.
it's important to know when to hire out.
And you obviously, when you started, were doing this on your own, styling the food, taking your photos, taking your videos. But at some point, and maybe it was when you had your second child or your third child, I don't know, and you were like, you
Mm-hmm.
know what? I'm going to need
You
some
know what?
help. I'm going to need some help. So, a lot of people lose money as they're starting up their side hustles. And you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned scaling back. So I assume you're talking about your full-time role. So were you
Right.
able to match your income through your side hustle income? Or was it more like
I
scaling back hours in hopes of getting it there?
I wasn't going to. I'll tell you this right now for full transparency.
Yeah.
I I don't want to say that I operate from a scarcity mindset, but I
Ooh, I
feel
like
like
that.
a lot of us, especially those of us who have Caribbean backgrounds, we tend to become hyper focused on stability. And
Mm-hmm.
you no matter what it is, you crave that stability. I was not reducing hours at my guaranteed biweekly paycheck unless I could either maintain or supersede the lifestyle that I've already created for myself.
Yes.
And when it started to get to the point where I was putting in a lot less sweat equity and like doubling or tripling a biweekly paycheck, it just stopped making sense for me to be still going to the hospital full time.
Yes.
All the time that I'm dedicated at the hospital, I could take that time and energy and put it towards my own brand and thereby increasing my ability to make income. Because if you have more time, you have everything. And not only that, your mental health. Working full time at the hospital plus working full time at the business kind of felt not kind of, it did feel like working two full time jobs at the same time. You're like, I'm on my lunch break answering emails. I'm
Yes.
arriving to the parking lot 45 minutes before my shift starts, either answering emails, editing
It's
content,
like
trying to
around
reply.
the clock.
Like, exactly. It's
Yeah.
like around the clock before I go to bed, like making sure I check. And I was just like, no, like, let me scale it back.
Yeah.
So I scaled back my hours to part time,
Okay.
but I had to make sure that not only that I could sustain my lifestyle, that number one, I had adequate savings, we have
Mhm.
adequate savings. I also have the benefit of having a partner who works. Like,
Yes.
we can't leave that out because
Right. We
some
can't leave
people
that
are
out.
legit. Yeah, some people are legit doing this on their own, whether they're single parents or they just are working alone. I have a spouse that has a full time job that has benefits, so I'm able to benefit from that.
Mhm.
And we can't leave that out because that's important. We need
Yeah.
health
We
insurance,
need the
we
full
need
picture.
dental.
Yeah.
Yes, you need to think about those types of things before you say, I'm going to leave my job
Mhm.
and take my entrepreneurship seriously. So, because of my spouse's work, I was able to scale back my hours to part time and relinquish my benefits.
Yes.
So, I started doing part time hours and the business continued to thrive. And I also had to prove to myself that I could withstand a drought. because
Ooh.
you have your times where the requests are coming, like the work is coming. You had a great month, like you got a lot of traffic this month to your blog, like your income is really high this month. And then you have your dry seasons
Oh, the
where,
dry, talk about it. The you never
yeah,
thought it would come. Like 2019, I don't know about you. I've been hearing a lot
yeah,
of content creators, past guests talk about 2019. 2019 was a good year for a lot of us. And then, things took a turn.
yeah.
Things took a
Things
turn.
take a
So you
turn.
have to
And
be able to withstand those seasons.
right. And sometimes a lot of those seasons are beyond your control.
Oh,
Like
yes.
I've heard a lot of people who operate websites that there
Mhm.
was a Google update sometime last year,
Yeah.
and that Google update affected their ranking in the search results. And because their ranking got affected, it really put a dent in their income.
Yeah.
So I feel like in order for you to say, all right, I'm going to take this full time or I'm going to take this seriously, you got to prove to yourself that you can handle a dry season, and how long can you withstand that dry season. And I think a cushion, that cushion you have, so you have a soft landing, that's really
Yeah.
important. And diversifying your streams of income, so in
Yes.
case if one stream of income is not performing so well
Right.
for, sometimes it's a month, sometimes it's several months, then you
Right.
have something else that you can rely on in that season without feeling like you're going to lose your mind.
Yeah, like when is the next check coming? Because I think with the pros and the cons of brand partnerships is when it's great, right? But when
Yeah.
they just all of a sudden say, all right, we're pulling budget from that, then you have to be able to pivot or say, okay, I'm not overly reliant on inbound brand deals going on. I have this happening. I have a book that I'm launching or other things. So tell us a little bit more about your revenue streams today.
Mhm. So my revenue streams include ad revenue from YouTube. And to be honest, like I haven't even really posted on my YouTube channel. So that's like the power of YouTube, that you can continue to make money from your YouTube, even if you're not
Yes,
necessarily
legacy
posting
content.
regular. Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't ever abandon like evergreen content,
Hmm.
because that will keep you paid in your sleep even when you're not even working on it.
Yep. Yep.
My website, I get ad revenue from my website, which is also evergreen
Yes.
content. And you can always rank. I mean, if you're searching for a Christmas recipe, sometimes the article that comes up first is an article from 2 or 3 years ago.
Hmm.
So that's another stream of income. Brand partnerships are another stream of income of mine. I get money from working with brands.
Yeah.
And then I also have cookbooks. I have ebooks that I put out. And then I just put out my first physical hardcover.
Congrats.
Thank you. So, I've been able to diversify them, but I do also want to stress that each stream of income that you set up requires you to show up.
Yes.
So you can say, yeah, I want several streams of income. Then you have to be willing to show up in several places.
Hmm.
So a lot of people think that they should set up as many streams of income as possible. And the truth is that's not sustainable, because YouTube, I got to show up to YouTube.
Yeah.
Even if I've been neglecting it a little bit, you got to show up there. Your website, where you're earning revenue from ads, you have to show up there too. When you're making money from brand partnerships, you have to show up there too. You're
Hmm.
making money from your cookbooks or your products, whether it be whatever you decide to put out, you have to show up there too.
Yeah.
So I just want to tell anyone who's thinking about doing something like that to be mindful of how many places you can realistically show up at once.
Right. It's a step by step process because often when one gets to a good place, it's because you really just leaned into that revenue stream for a while and got it to a good place. And then you
Yeah,
moved on to, nurturing a new revenue stream.
right.
Tell us a little bit about writing this book. So, what made you decide to do a physical book? What was the process? Did you self publish or work with a publisher?
I worked with a publisher, and it's a journey.
Yeah.
So let me go back a little bit. I came up with this concept for a cookbook at the end of 2020.
Yep.
because I started releasing ebooks first as a full-time employee for an organization, plus
Yeah.
a mother with a family. I think that digital products is the best way for you to earn a side hustle because it doesn't require you to store any merchandise. It's easy to do customer service requests. If someone says they didn't get a link, you can just easily go into your Shopify account and resend the link. It's
Yeah.
just like, and it's just the most sustainable way to earn income. And I think after a while, a lot of people were like, we love these ebooks. I wish you had a hardcover version. But I wasn't going to move on a physical product until I was sure that I could show up for it. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
the moment you decide to offer a physical product, you have to figure out the logistics. Do I have place to store this? Who's going to manage packaging, shipping? Who's going to manage the customer service?
Yep.
People inquiring about where's my package? I haven't received my product, blah, blah, blah.
Manufacturing it,
And
the product itself.
yeah, exactly. So I wasn't going to move on a physical product until I was sure that I could dedicate the time and energy. So I used my digital products to carry me through. And I started working on the recipes in the background while all of this craziness was going on. And it was difficult because I had to create content to stay consistent on my page, but I also had to create content in the background that I knew I was going to use for my hardcover cookbook. And I started thinking, like, what can I do to kind of disrupt that area? How can I offer something that's a little bit different than what everyone is accustomed to? So I said that, we're moving into a very interactive digital space. And I said, how about I just make the cookbook be as interactive as possible? And I decided that I was going to put stories in there. So it's not just a cookbook. You can actually like sit down and
Yes.
read.
Yes.
And yeah. And also, I wanted to make it interactive by putting QR codes in the book. That way, if you got stuck on a recipe or if a recipe was particularly challenging, we know that all recipes are not created equal. Some recipes are really easy. You get something like oxtail, it might take you a little bit longer. You might feel a little bit intimidated. So, and also rice
Yep.
and peas.
Yep.
So I put QR codes in there, and if you scan it, a surprise video will come up.
Oh,
Some of
nice.
them are secret videos that
Yeah.
have not been published
Oh,
to my
wow.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Yes. So there's like a little bit of that intimate connection with the reader,
I love
and
that.
it'll help you. Yeah. So it's like for the oxtail recipe, there's a QR code there. My son actually used it a couple days ago. I said, you think you can cook oxtail from the cookbook? And he was like, yeah, I can do it. So I was like, all right, now show me how you're going to use the
Oh,
QR code.
gosh. Yeah.
And he scanned the QR code. The video came up. Surprise, you unlocked another video. Like if you're having trouble with your oxtail, like this is what I recommend. And it's kind of like having me
I
there
love
without having
that.
me there.
Yes. And, your kids and them cooking out is part of the magic of your page, too. I just love seeing them prepping
Oh, thank
food
you.
at their age, too. It's just so impressive. Before we get into the lightning round, I'm curious your advice for people who are juggling content creation. Maybe they have found a niche in something that's doing really well and growing, but at the same time, they have a full-time job. So how do you juggle building your content creation business into a real business? How do you set that foundation as you're side hustling?
I would say that you need to master discipline. You don't always have to be motivated because trust me, there's many days where I'm just not motivated, but the
Yeah.
discipline is what makes me show up. It's going to continue. It's going to make you show up for your audience. And that is how I maintain consistency because a lot of people, it's so hard. And take a break.
Yeah.
If this is getting to be too much for you, take a break.
Yeah.
Even if you
That's the
don't
beauty
take
of
a break
side
for too long
hustling. You can
now.
take a break. You can
Yeah.
take a break,
Listen,
regroup.
take a break to regroup. I would say work smarter, not harder. Don't put your head in the sand and think that your talent is going to be enough to get you seen. You
Yes.
have to
Yes.
be strategic. You have to
Hmm.
implement best practices. You
Yes.
have to see what are your peers doing in your niche that's working and how can you integrate them into your own story so that you maintain your own unique space in the creator realm, because we're really, if I'm being honest, the market is quite saturated.
Hmm.
A lot of people are creating content.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out what's special to you and what makes you stand out, and be patient.
Mm.
Nothing
Yes.
happens overnight.
Yes.
Sometimes you might see somebody and you think that they're an overnight success. Oh, this person got X amount of followers in
Yeah.
just 3 short months. Like,
Yes.
don't look at someone else and what they're doing and get frustrated and say like, oh, why isn't it happening to me? You really got to
Right.
focus on your own plate.
Hmm. And it's always so fun to me too when it feels that way. When I see someone who it's like, oh wow, they grew really quickly, and then I really investigate, and I'm like, oh, they've been making videos since they were in high school. It's just their videos used to be about
Exactly.
nothing. But that
Mm-hmm.
muscle has been in
Mm-hmm.
practice for over a decade now. So you
Yeah.
just really have to look beneath the surface. And I love that you mentioned patience. And then finally, something that's come up a few times that you've said is this word storytelling. And storytelling can
Mm-hmm.
be done both with words and visually. But I think it's the key. Actually, I know it's the key behind
Mm-hmm.
all content that's doing really well. All content creators
Mm-hmm.
who are doing really well are storytelling. So
Mm-hmm.
we all have to like dig deep and figure out what stories do we have to tell and how do we want to tell them. You can't just post your picture of rice and peas and keep it moving. You
Yes.
got to tell a
Although I wish
story,
I
man.
could.
We all wish we could, right? We could, a lot
Yeah.
of people can make
Mm-hmm.
these dishes, but what is your secret sauce? What's the spin that you've put on it? But also the story that you tell, again, visually or with words, is really where the magic is, especially for you. That nurse
Right.
can cook.
Thank you. But you know what? A lot of
Mhm.
people, and I just want to tell your listeners that some people feel like, oh, there's nothing special about me. There
No,
is something
there
special about you
is.
because your story is unique to you.
Yeah,
Nobody else can tell your story.
right.
We don't all have the same
Yeah.
experiences. So tell your story. And
Yes.
that's what is going to be what separates you from others.
Exactly. And even if I can't relate directly, it will be the catalyst for another memory that causes me
Right.
to relate to you. I was telling this to maybe another guest or a client recently. A great piece of advice that I heard the other day was when you tell your story, people aren't actually hearing your story. They're hearing their
Mm-hmm.
story. Like when you tell a
Yeah.
really good story, that's what it does. It makes you start to think about, oh, when I was growing up, this is what happened. Or if you tell a story about what
Yes.
happened at work, they're thinking about what happened at their job, right? And so
Exactly.
that's
And that's
why
why people
storytelling's
want to see
powerful.
themselves.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So we could talk all day, but let's jump into this
We
lightning
could.
round.
All right.
All right. So, number one, what's a resource that has really helped you grow the That Nurse Can Cook brand that you can share with the Side Hustle Pro audience?
I want to say, you know what? CapCut.
Ooh, okay. That's the video editor.
CapCut is a video editor. It's an awesome tool and an awesome resource. They have multiple features in there that you could use. I recently discovered they have a teleprompter
All right.
feature in that app, and I used it to help me do ad reads.
Okay. I love that. That's a
So
great one.
yes. And also, TikTok is a great resource. They
Hello.
don't gatekeep on TikTok.
Oh,
Anything you
yes.
want to learn, like go over to TikTok,
Yes.
how to create
Big
content. What's
facts.
the best? Yes.
I
What's the
research
best
everything on
lighting?
TikTok now, okay? Don't be mad at me.
Right.
But everything, because they get to the point, like, I'm sorry, but I need y'all to get to the point in 10 seconds or less. I don't want a long video.
Yes.
So thank you. Yes.
Use
All right.
CapCut and TikTok.
TikTok. Number two, who is a Black woman entrepreneur who you would want to trade places with for a day just to kind of pick their brain, see what they do in their business? Non-celebrity.
Pinky Cole.
Pinky Cole, yeah, she's been coming up a lot lately. I got to get her in the chair. She amazing. And why would you want to trade places?
I see a lot of myself in her, and I feel like our stories, we have stories that parallel each other.
Yes,
and she's amazing and inspiring. And I may have different goals than her, but I admire what she's been able to achieve so much that I just want. What are you thinking about when you wake up this morning? What's in that brain of yours?
Yes, and
what's
all
going
the children,
on,
and all the while having all the children, like I'm just like, wait, how are we doing this? Okay, number 3, what's a non-negotiable part of your day these days?
Being able to eat a meal uninterrupted.
And how do you do that?
Baby, get your brother, put on this thing right here. I need 15 minutes and I just want to eat a sandwich uninterrupted.
Yes, I love doing that too. That is such peace to me. So
it's become such peace.
I love that. We're liking that. Yes.
One meal uninterrupted.
Mm-hmm. Number 4, what is a personal trait that has helped you significantly in business?
Determination. I might slow down, but I'm not going to quit.
Hello. I love that. And then finally, what is your parting advice for fellow Black women entrepreneurs, side hustlers who want to be their own boss, but are nervous to lose that steady paycheck or scale back that steady paycheck?
Take control of your inner voice. Your inner voice can become like a toddler running around unchecked.
Ooh.
And that inner voice is really what stops a lot of us, because we get into this imposter syndrome. We start doubting ourselves. We start saying, oh, I'm not like so-and-so. Maybe if I was more this, maybe if I was more like this. Take control of that inner voice and train it to speak positivity into you, because every single cell in your body can hear and feel that inner voice. You want to train that inner voice to be positive and be kind to yourself. Stop being so hard on yourself. I was too hard on me. And that's the only regret that I would say I would have in my journey. I was too hard on me. When you're doing something that has never been done before, you will go through some things that people have never gone through before. So be patient. If you don't have all the answers, don't start kicking yourself because you made one mistake. Reframe those failures and say, okay, I made a mistake, but what did I learn, and how can I use what I learned to make myself better and go forward?
Wow, I'm tearing up. What? This journey is hard, because y'all. That advice is real. That
inner voice, you got to take control of that inner voice.
You have got to, and that's
what does it sound like?
That's been my focus all year. So when I tell you that hit me deep. So I thank you for that. That is the perfect note.
You're welcome.
To end on. So where can people connect with you and buy your book after this episode?
You can find me on Instagram at That Nurse Can Cook, also on TikTok, also on YouTube. Yes. Be patient with me on YouTube. A girl had a baby, and listen, it's been rough out here, but I'm getting back to it. All right, I'm getting back to it. Thank you. I'm doing good. Yeah. Exactly. I have a website, thatnursecooks.com. There's tons of free recipes there. Yes. Follow my journey on Instagram. You can see how I'm just juggling everything: entrepreneurship, motherhood, wifehood, sisterhood, and all that type of jazz.
All right, guys, there you have it. Helena, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you in the guest chair. This has been a wonderful conversation. I've enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed listening, and I will talk to you next week. Hey guys, thanks for listening to Side Hustle Pro. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other side hustlers just like you to find the show. And if you want to hear more from me, you can follow me on Instagram at Side Hustle Pro. Plus, sign up for my 6-bullet Saturday newsletter at sidehustlepro.co/newsletter. When you sign up, you will receive weekly nuggets from me, including what I'm up to, personal lessons, and my business tip of the week. Again, that's sidehustlepro.co/newsletter to sign up. Talk to you soon.